And I realized that I forgot to talk about a few things that were huge during those 5 years that I left out. I think I've just blocked them from my memory, but one of them was like after the tonsillectomies, after all the tubes, during that time, Treyu, who at the time was 3, he didn't have tubes. He didn't have the tonsillectomy. I was like, yeah, hallelujah, brother. He's the only one that's not having a problem. But he was developing this horrible rash on his leg. And I was like, what is happening? And earlier I had taken him into the doctor and he had strep throat. Surprise, surprise. And so they gave him, sometimes I prefer just to give him the rotavirus shot, which is just like a one and done, get her done. Instead of like a 10-day antibiotic, because when my kids are on antibiotics, especially ceftonir, they develop C. diff, which is Clostridium difficile. I don't even know how you say it, but it's a horrible, horrible gastric like problem that can be fatal, and turn into colitis and just tear your insides apart. So Xander has had that twice. Kenia has had that. And so I was trying to prevent that for Treyu and gave him the rotavirus shot in his quad, which is an antibiotic, which just, goes right into the bloodstream and takes care of the strep. But what we didn't know at the time was that he didn't have strep, and that there's another nasty virus that takes the shape, that can mask itself as strep. And he developed this horrible rash on his leg. We didn't put 2 and 2 together. The doctors had to get second opinions because his leg was red, raw, and rock hard, and we did not know why. And itchy and hot. It was like his leg had a fever. And he ended up I took him to primaries because his lymph nodes, like he had like tennis balls in his throat. And they didn't know what it was. And finally, after doing blood work, he had acute mononucleosis, which is just mono. Freaking mono in a 3-year-old. And people made me feel so stupid because they were like, how does a 3-year-old get mono? I was like, I don't know. But the doctors thought it was strep, so we gave him this antibiotic. But this antibiotic had a very adverse reaction, or his body had an adverse reaction to the rotavirus shot that was supposed to be meant for the strep, but he didn't have strep at all. It was, in fact, mono. So that was trippy. And then I forgot to mention that Kenia was vomiting profusely and diarrhea like double dragon. And it was bad. And she was 18 months old. And I was like, what is happening to this little baby's body? Just, again, shredding her insides apart. So I ended up taking her to primaries because she was so dehydrated. And she tested positive for rotavirus. I was like, what the heck? She was immunized for that. It was kind of my first real taste of what was happening, or how immunizations and vaccines and sicknesses work. Like, yes, she was immunized for it. Yes, she had the vaccine, but I said to the nurse, I'm like, she was immunized for that. Like, me thinking that she won't get that ever again. She said, well, Rhoda, I even remember her like quoting it as Rhoda. She's like, Rhoda broke through. Like, Rhoda's a freaking woman, or like this person that broke through. Rhoda broke through the vaccine, and it could have been fatal had she not had the vaccine. But since she had a little bit of help from, immunities from the vaccine, then at least we're here. So then there was that. And then I forgot to mention, of course, my awful wrist break. But that is a podcast in and of itself, and it's probably a 3-part session. Oh my goodness. So just some things to add to the most horrible 5 years of my life was the rotavirus, the mononucleosis in my babies, and then my wrist injury.